So you may be wondering what the major differences are between Malaysia and Indonesia. And there are, of course, quite a few. Indonesia is, by virtue of its larger population, more blue collar. In Malaysia, where they are known for being doctors and white collar workers, they would probably view the average Indonesian as more of a blue collar worker, despite essentially being the same people ethnically. And so ultimately what happened in Jawa was they used to speak Javanese. That language was replaced by the current version of Bahasa Indonesia, which is a variation of the Malay language. But my opinion ultimately is not that these countries are separated by, economic fortunes, although they certainly are. My opinion is that the major differences between the countries rests in the fact that Indonesia has greater Japanese influence than Malaysia. And I don't think, the evidence is small or little to support that opinion. What does this remind you of? This should remind you of a Japanese house, right? Sliding doors. Obviously it's a bit more intricate, but take a look at the words, in sampai jumpa instead of jumpa lagi. Sampai sounds Japanese to me. Choko, that sounds Japanese to me. That's not the word that you have in Malaysia. I think in Malay, it would be kedai, which is obviously a different sounding word. So, if you're looking for some differences, you have to remember that despite the anti-Japanese propaganda, I suppose you could say, what was really happening in this area is that the Japanese were actually training the Indonesians in some parts of Indonesia to resist and fight back against their British or Dutch occupiers. That story is, of course, more famous in Surabaya and in Aceh. But it's a big country, so we don't know whether or not the Japanese soldiers behaved honorably everywhere they went. But certainly, if you ask me, the major differences between the two countries today is, again, in the Japanese influence. And I don't think it was certainly not all bad, because the language would not have retained so much of Japanese influence.